A black landaulet police car flew through the fog-bound streets of Little Italy, the driver blaring the horn wildly in an attempt to avoid accidents. He swerved past market stalls and farm wagons, and startled pedestrians and occasionally clipped the curbs and banquettes of the narrower roads. At the intersection of Upper Line and Magnolia Streets, he veered the car through a sharp corner and screeched to a halt a half-block from a grocery store. In the rear of the vehicle, Detective Lieutenant Michael Talbot dropped back into his seat and breathed a sigh of relief. "Nice driving, Rez," he said. "Thanks," the driver replied, failing to notice the sarcasm. Through the glass partition that separated the two men, Michael saw the driver flip open a pocket watch and check the time. 7 minutes and 25 seconds, said the driver, a round, swarthy man called Perez. "That's gotta be a record," he added, flashing a smile at Michael through the rearview mirror. Michael smiled back weakly, still feeling faintly nauseous. Perez scrabbled around the dashboard for a notebook, and with the stub of a pencil wrote down the time. The New Orleans Police Department had taken receipt of its first-ever fleet of motor cars only a few months previously, and the drivers in the various precincts had, as far as Michael could tell, set up some kind of betting league on how fast they could drive their various routes. 3 of the new cars had already been wrecked, one of them by Perez. Michael let his stomach settle for a moment and arched his back to look out of the car's rear window. His eyes settled on the cheap corner store grocery a little further down the street. It was typical of the stores Italian migrants were setting up all over the city. Single-storied, a shop in the front, living quarters in the back, a yard for deliveries at the rear, and a sheet metal sign teetering above the whole jerry-built mess, proudly displaying the owner's name. Michael sighed and rubbed his face, running his fingers along the scars that pitted his cheeks. Outside the store, among the carriages from the police department and the coroner's office, a mob had gathered. Italian locals that a cordon of patrolmen was half-heartedly holding back. Michael could tell it wasn't the usual kind of crowd that always seemed to materialize at grisly crime scenes. The passers-by, the neighbors, the reporters, the street corner habitués with nothing better to do. This crowd hadn't gathered out of macabre curiosity. It was there because it was scared, and Michael's heart tightened at the sight of it. From what he knew about human nature, it didn't take much for fearful mobs to turn violent. "Into the madding crowd," he mumbled to himself. "Say what?" Perez asked, glancing up from the notebook with a frown and a dart of his eyes in the rearview mirror. But Michael had already opened the passenger side door, flipped his Homburg onto his head, and stepped out into the street. He strode towards the far end of the cordon, hoping to avoid being noticed by taking the longer route, but Michael was a lurching type, singular and easy to spot. He was a head taller than most other men, with gangly, awkward limbs and a face raised red and bumpy by smallpox. As he approached the cordon, he pulled the Homburg low, but a beady-eyed reporter happened to turn his way at just the wrong time. Michael saw him nudge one of his colleagues and whisper, and in an instant the crowd erupted. Cameras swung towards him, and a riot of flashbulbs strobed and popped, sending little clouds of soot into the air that mottled the fog. The papermen shouted his name and bellowed out questions. Angry Italian phrases flew his way. He carried on pushing past the throng, and after a few seconds of jostling, he made it to the cordon and through to the other side. He nodded hello to a few of the patrolmen that he recognized, stony-faced, annoyed-looking men, none of whom bothered to respond. A young, earnest beat cop in a starched blue uniform trotted down the front steps to greet him.
"Morning, sir. The victims are this way,"
said the beat cop, a greenhorn called Dawson, freshly returned from the war and eager to prove his worth. He held his hand up to the storefront with a smile.